Hi everyone, it's Jackie Schomburg-Abstract. I went back to my giant paper today. This is 24 by 18 and it has some texture on it which you may be able to see as I'm using these Inktense blocks, which are their Derwent is the brand, Inktense blocks. Now these are water soluble. As you see, I'm spraying some water on there. Uh, in theory, I don't remember if I've tested this or not, but in theory, once they've dried, so once they've been wet and then dried, then they are fixed, which means they're not going to interfere with any layers on top of them. And actually, I can I can confirm this because I did some collage and the collage didn't turn magenta, so I can confirm that. Um, I really missed using a giant piece of paper and wanted to just scribble and play. So that's what I'm doing. I haven't used these blocks much. I did an entire video when I first got them as my testing video and realized that my camera was off the whole time because my storage was full. So ever since then, I've been certainly annoyed in general with the theme, but not annoyed at the supplies because I do like them. The thought of doing another video on something I've already done an exact same video on is frustrating, even though you guys didn't get to see it. So maybe sometime. And I'm still in my fluorescent red period right now. So I smeared that all over. This is some sun gold from Nova Color Paints. I only had a little bit left in my container, thought it was going to take a couple shakes to get it all out, and I got a lot more than I expected. It is a metallic or a pearlescent paint. You can see a little bit where on the right side the light's not quite as direct, so it looks a little darker, a little greener. On the left side it's being reflected, or there's light being reflected in it. And because I took so much paint and it would take me forever to dry it, I just used some other paper to blot it up, which also made some interesting marks on that paper for future collage. This is some basically like butcher paper. It's kind of like the same texture and weight as paper bags at the grocery store. A sweet friend sent me flowers and it came with with this paper and I loved it, so I stashed that away. And it's only been a year. So, holding on to paper for a year before using it, it's not terrible, right? And for those of you who haven't seen me do this before and think I'm insane, which, I mean, whatever, it would still be a fun way to start a painting, I'm going to cut this into smaller pieces. So I'm starting with a large piece of paper. I'm just playing with the materials, having fun, not thinking too much about what goes where. I'm not worried about composition. And I will be cutting this up. The reason I like doing this so much is twofold. One, it's really fun to just mess around and not worry about anything. And secondly, when you do cut it up, if you work very free and don't think too much on the first layer when everything's one big sheet, you will get some really unexpected fun marks in your smaller pieces that you wouldn't have thought to do. They just wouldn't have occurred to you. Or at least they don't occur to me. Maybe you would have planned the whole thing out. I don't know. But either way, you'll even surprise yourself. So it's really fun when things like that happen. And then once you cut it apart, if you have enough marks to react to, it's usually pretty fun and more directed, that you know what you want to respond to once you cut it into smaller pieces. These are basically the papers I used to offload my brayer, my roller, after I've used my jelly plate. So this is just some black of varying degrees of opacity. And I didn't have any real rhyme or reason. I just cut them to interesting shapes. And I like that this is a very geometric grid, like it's not an exact grid, but it's very similar to a grid. I mean, it's a grid. It's just not a mathematically perfect grid, right? So I like that it was a harder line than the torn paper with the flowers on it. Gives a very different feel, and I wanted to have both of those present. I have a problem with using way too much gloss medium, but if I don't use too much, I tend to use not enough, and then things don't stick well, so I'm okay using too much. So it is important that before you cut, that things are not super wet and super sticky. Because I've put a lot of gloss medium on this so far, and the paper that I'm attaching is pretty thick, I wanted to make sure that I at least dried the layers a bit before moving forward. And I'm going to be adding some more collage, which adding this high contrast, I mean, I love a good black and white stripe for just about anything, but it really pulls focus here and gives you something to look at because there's so much vibrancy in the fluorescent red and the magenta and darkness in the black. There's just a lot happening, but I feel like it sounds a little strange to say there's so much happening, so I'm going to add something that's even more, uh, more patterned and more in your face. But it does help pull the focus together. This is my unintentional 2-foot ruler because my children broke my yardstick. It also helps to dry as much as you can before you cut because, you just run a risk of the scissors getting stuck and tearing something. Or just getting sticky with your hands. If you have gloss medium on your hands like I usually do, you can see there some of the metallic of the gold. So this is 4 9x12s right now. And then I cut this last one up into 2 pieces because I didn't love it as one. I thought it would be better as 2. The one in the bottom left corner and the upper left corner, those are my 2 favorites so far, especially the bottom left corner. I liked, even though the stripes went all the way across the sheet, which normally I'd want something to interrupt them somehow, I don't know, I just really liked them. Remember these? These are the gold sheets that I had used to take some of the gold paint off when it was so thick. I decided to tear it up and add it back in as a different kind of collage. And on that bottom right one, I feel like that really softens things a bit. Things are very bright, very bold, very hard edges. And this kind of free, easy breezy gold helps soften that. After that first piece fitting so well, or in a way that I liked it anyway, I was like, oh, this is going to be super easy to find me, to find pieces for every one of these pages that is going to look fantastic. And then I auditioned a bunch of pieces and didn't really like any of them until this one. I did try a bunch of other combinations. Some were more successful than others. And to those of you, if anyone's watching that does not like using really bright, bold colors, because I know that there's a whole bunch of people that are not interested in it, which is totally fine. Um, some people think that you can't put art like this in your house because, you don't have a fluorescent red couch and it's not going to go with anything, or it's just too much and, your house isn't decorated like this. I did put some in situ pictures at the end of this just to show you what it would look like in a frame. And feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that even though they're very bold and very bright, there are enough spaces, like the black spaces and even the flowers, because that paper is much darker and more neutral, that it still looks sophisticated and fun in a frame. So, food for thought. I would love to hear your opinions. Please let me know in the comments. But I think, I think there's a way to fit any art that you like in your house, as far as I'm concerned. And it's certainly not for everybody. But I really enjoy just demonstrating that it really can be for everybody. You don't have to have a house that's, made out of candy for these to look good in it. And I had so much fun making these. It really is fun to do this. I like working in a series. This is a super easy way to work in a series, just to start with a big piece and cut it up. Much like I've been doing a lot of grid journaling lately, and this is another way of going about working in a grid. Because all a grid is a small series. So if you take a 9 by 12 page, cut it into 4 pieces, you've got a little grid, right? You've got a 4-piece series or a little grid. So it's really just a matter of scale and a matter of how much time you have. And I will tell you that it took me less time to do these 5 mixed media pieces than it took me to do my last grid journal. My last grid journal took me like 4 or 5 hours. And this took me maybe an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. But that was with drawing time included. So these are the final results as they are now. I may add more. And if you're interested in learning how to make art in a small series and practice that, a reminder that I do have a new freebie. It is a grid journaling made easy guide where I give you templates, share my process, and get you started really quickly. There's a QR code in the very last image I'm about to show that you can click there or go to JackieSchomburg.com/grid.